Hello, everybody.
Hello, Greg.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate the very kind introduction. Before I get us started, real quickly, as he mentioned, I represent both the Richland Operations Office and the Office of River Protection. The manager of the Richland Operations Office is Matt McCormick. I think he's spoken here before. And the Office of River Protection has a new manager who just started January 4th, and I want to briefly introduce him today. His name is Kevin Smith. He's in the audience. He has a long, distinguished career in the Air Force. He retired from the Air Force, and he's worked for the Department of Energy for the past few years. He's been at the Savannah River site, and most recently came to us from Los Alamos, where he was the site manager there. So we're very fortunate to have him here managing the Office of River Protection. So if you don't mind just giving him a round of applause. And if you see him, that's Kevin Smith. I'm going to tell a little anecdote just to make fun of myself before I get totally started. So I woke up in the middle of the night last night, and I had this dream. And in this dream, I was like a third-party dream, and I'm watching myself walk up in front of you distinguished people, and I'm wearing the rattiest sweatsuit and this WSU Cougar sweatshirt and dress shoes. So go Cougs. So I'm wondering, in my dream, what the heck is going on here? So turns out I came up and I started the speech, and it was somewhat like this. I'd gone to get coffee in this dream, and I'm sitting there, and somebody had spilled an entire cup of coffee all over my suit. So the good news is this day started out better than that one in the dream. So, but we'll get to more serious business here. So I want to talk to you a little bit. This is fairly brief for Hanford Speak. I only have 67 slides, so no, I'm just kidding. 6 or 7, I'm just kidding. We're going to talk a little bit about Hanford Cleanup. We've broken our cleanup really into 3 areas. The river corridor, which is the 210 square miles, which you see there, bordering the river. And if you're not familiar with this slide on the screen, we're down here in the south, in the lower right-hand corner. The river up in the very far upper left-hand corner would be Vernita Bridge, and it flows downstream all the way around there. The river corridor is the component that basically borders the river. The central plateau is where the waste treatment plant, the tank farms, all the canyon facilities are, and where the tank waste is. So we've broken up this cleanup into really 3 components: river corridor, central plateau, and the tank waste component. So you're going to hear me talk about that a little bit. What is the work we're doing? I'm going to ask a question. Who's been out to Hanford? Wow, that's good. That's great. It's a very complex place. I just took a person from the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee on a tour last week, and he was just absolutely amazed at the size and magnitude of the complex, how big it is, how complex it is, and just how massive the facilities are. So we're doing a lot of work out there, and it's good to get people to see it. So what work are we doing? We're treating contaminated groundwater, we're demolishing facilities, we're moving buried waste and contaminated soil near the Columbia River, we're emptying underground tank waste, and we're intending to treat waste for safe disposal. I'll go into a little more detail in a second here. But from your perspective, what is the Hanford budget do for cleanup, or for this economy? It does a tremendous amount. This is a tremendous engine for this economy. Sometimes as the CFO, I feel like I'm living the fortune cookie life. May you live in interesting times. We're living in interesting times for sure. This is a very difficult time, uncertain time in federal government. But that being said, for the future, we believe we're going to be right around $2 billion unless there's some really unforeseen events for the foreseeable future, literally out 30 years. So that's a good thing. I want to give you some certainty there. But what can happen with sequestration or other debt ceiling issues, etc., there may be some blips around that 2 billion mark. And that will cause, or could cause, either some upticks or some downticks. So I want to give you some confidence that we're likely to be around that $2 billion level, but there's going to be some fluctuations. And as those fluctuations occur, as work starts and stops, there's going to be skill mix issues, and there's going to be uncertainty and some impact. So, but overall, fairly good. Let's talk a little bit about our prime contractors. You know, Department of Energy does our work through contracts. We have a tremendous amount of contracts out there, prime contracts that the department, both the Office of River Protection and the Richland Operations Office has, and then they have literally thousands of subcontracts. Thousands. Last year, between the two offices, $872 million of subcontracting was done by our prime contractors. That's a tremendous amount of work. And almost $500 million, $475 million of that was done in this local area with local companies. That's a big engine for this community. We believe that's going to continue in the near future. There should be no reason not to. We have subcontracting goals and small business goals that we have with our prime contractors. We intend to continue to focus on those. Contractor workforce. There's currently around 9,000 total DOE and contractor employees. There's only about 400 federal employees between the two offices to oversee the other nearly 9,000 employees that are working for the contractor. That number is down. Last year, I think at this time, it was about 10,000, so it has decreased a little bit, but that should be a fairly stable amount in the near future. Budget outlook. As I told you, we continue to need cleanup at the current funding levels between the two offices, around $1 billion for the Richland Operations Office and about $1.2 billion for the Office of River Protection, which includes both the waste treatment plant and managing the tank farms. The cleanup mission, it should continue to 2050 or 2060. This is, you know, some of our kids working if they decide to get into this industry. So I'm going to tell you a little bit, we're going to crow a little bit about some of the work we've done in 2012. A lot of times we hear and read in the newspaper some of the things that have gone wrong, some of the GAO reports, IG reports, etc. But we have done a tremendous amount of work at the Hanford site last year. We did it during the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, and we intend to do it in the coming year. So I'm going to emphasize a couple of them. I won't read them all, but we finished pumping out the 10th large underground waste tank. You talked about going to the Hanford site. How many people have seen a tank farm? They're hard to see though, huh? So let's talk a little bit about this one. I'll emphasize it for a minute. These tanks, not all of them, but they range from around 50,000 gallons up to about a little over 1 million gallons. These are single shell tanks. So pumping out, we call it retrieving, a single shell tank is a big deal. They're 10 to 12 feet underground. It's under gravel. There's piping. And the only way to get into these things is through a riser that's most of the times around this big. So you got to, you know, not quite as big as this room, but some of them are almost the size of this room. And you're trying to get down 99% of the tank waste out of this tank. It's sludges and salt cakes, and it's not real liquidy. And you're trying to get from way up there, down here, and all the way over here to get it cleaned out. We just did our 10th one. That's a very big accomplishment. We have a lot more to do, but you know, this is a very highly radioactive environment. It is not a place you can just have people go into. You have to do it with robotics, vacuum systems, etc. So this is a big deal. And I think the Office of River Protection, our contractor, have figured out some very sound technologies to get this done, to get it done better. So this is a really, really important item. So cleaning out the 10th large underground waste tank is a big deal. We're going to do more. The waste treatment plant, we're 65% complete with construction. That's a very, very important item. End reactor. The only dual-purpose reactor, the last reactor built, was cocooned. It's kind of a sad thing, but it's a good accomplishment. Let's see. Lots of waste going from the Central Plateau and those reactors that were cocooning, the piping and soils, etc. We are moving all that up to the Environmental Restoration Disposal Facility. It's an engineered landfill on the middle of the Central Plateau. And we moved some radioactive sludge away from the river. We intend to get that done in the next 2 or 3 years. And the largest groundwater treatment facility was completed. The construction was completed, and we're operating that, which is a very good thing. I'll tell you a little bit more about the volume that's happening there. Other news, briefly, safety is very important to us. You've heard this for many years. You know, we really, really need people to go home in the same state they came to work in. So one of the things we've done, we have now site-wide safety standards. So the entire plant is working under the same safety standards. That makes, as people, you know, we have site-wide seniority. So as people go from one company to another, as a bump and roll may have occurred, they are working under the same safety standards. It's a very important thing. It allows us to continue to maintain the safe operating posture we have. We also announced intentions to extend a couple contracts. We do our work through contracts, and we intend now to exercise the options on a couple contracts there. That's very good, as well as the Advanced Technology Laboratory, which operates the 222S laboratory. Other thing, sort of driving towards the future. We are doing an environmental impact statement right now. We've hired Cascade Natural Gas, a local small business company, to help us determine if we can get gas service to areas of North Richland and to the center of the Hanford site. This is really a good thing if we can get it done. We're clearly in the starting or fledgling stages of the environmental impact statement, but it could really help us get reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and if we can get it done, save literally tens and up to hundreds of millions of dollars if we can get that accomplished. And I'm going to go into a little more detail on the B reactor in a second, but we lowered the age limit for B reactor tours. That's a big deal because now you can get middle schoolers out to B reactor. This is a really important aspect for us to showcase this heritage tourism, which is part of our future. It's just a wonderful thing, and if you haven't been to B reactor, you really need to go. Last year, let's see, since 2009, we've had visitors from 50 states and 50 countries to B reactor. Who's been to B reactor? You've been there. Have you been there recently? Since they put a lot of the stuff in there, it is really cool. I just went there last Wednesday. We need to crow about this. This is something that can potentially really help us to attract more tourism here. And if we can do that, it'd be very, very, very wonderful. We're also working hard to get, if possible, B reactor and some of the other areas designated as a national park. There was legislation in Washington that was advanced last session. We're trying to get it advanced and maybe even past this session to make a national park B reactor in some of the surrounding areas. So. The Richland Operations Office is very focused on what we call the 2015 vision. And what this is designed to do is get us off of the river corridor I mentioned, up into the Central Plateau. The important aspect of that is, one, we can reduce some infrastructure costs, but maybe most importantly, it can lead us to a future where we can release some of the areas for public access, maybe tourism, open some shorelines, and then in some industrial development in the southeastern area. We've been working with TriDec and other parts of our community resource organization for a 60 square mile area in the southeastern part of this site for industrial development. We're trying to ensure that we have a post-Hanford future and that we start looking at it now. But let me talk a little bit about the 2015 vision. The intent here, we had a goal, it was done in about 2008, 2009, to put a vision together to where we wanted to be in 2015. And in 2007, 2008, it seems like a long time, but it's really now only 2 years away. We've made tremendous progress on this, and the intent is to get us down to this Central Plateau, which, as I mentioned, includes the canyon facilities, the Environmental Restoration Disposal Facility, PFP, and some other buildings. We want to get all the river corridor done, some of those facilities. However, this is not an endpoint to cleanup. This is just a marking point. So we're now working on what we're going to do post-2015. And next year, you're probably going to hear all about it. So I don't know if it'll be me, but somebody will be here telling you about, and we don't know if we're going to call it the 2020 vision, 2021, doesn't matter. But there's plenty of work to do post-2015. Just to give you some perspective, you've heard about Rocky Flats, Mound, Fernald. Those all could fit into the Central Plateau and have 90% of the room still left over. Those are very small compared to the Central Plateau. So there still is a future of Hanford, as I mentioned earlier. It's going to go on, the cleanup's going to go on for 20, 30, maybe even 40 years. But we need to be thinking about the future. So let's talk about that for a second. We're trying diligently to look at really 3 areas for a future for Hanford Cleanup, or post-Hanford site after cleanup is completed. And while cleanup is being completed. So what are we looking at? First thing is, we call it heritage tourism. It's centered around the bee reactor. We think it's a very important thing. I mentioned it before. Give me a second, I got a couple little factoids. I guess I'd already mentioned it. 10,000 visitors since 2009. That's a tremendous number of people coming to the Tri-Cities, eating in our restaurants, etc. And if we can increase that, if we could potentially get this to be a national park, it could be tremendously more, maybe tens of thousands every year coming to the Tri-Cities. That's a big deal. The second area is river shore access. We don't know what the post-cleanup future looks like, but we'd like to maybe have walking trails, shoreline access, kayaking, bike trails, etc., all along that river corridor. It's a fabulous stretch of the Columbia River. I know you all have seen it. Many of you boated and fished out there. If we could have some ability in the relatively near term to have people have the ability to go out there, it'd be really wonderful. And then I mentioned a little bit about the third component, which is industrial development. We need to diversify our economy. We have some land there that's part of our comprehensive land use plan that is destined for industrial development in order to create jobs, and we're working closely with Carl and his crew to try and look at getting some manufacturing, industrial, maybe, who knows what the future holds. But we have some land available. It's gone through an EIS process. It's part of our comprehensive land use plan, and we hope that we can be very successful to get attract some industrial manufacturing or other development in order to create jobs in this community to diversify from the $2 billion a year of Hanford Cleanup. So with that, there is lots of stuff out there on Hanford. I know you see it in the Tri-City Herald lots of times, but there's on our webpage we have done a couple things. If you haven't seen it, we did a very kind of cool series of videos called the Hanford Story. It gives you some history of Hanford, and then there's some chapters to it that talk about the future, talk about tank waste, PFP. We have one on the Recovery Act. They're little vignette stories about 3 to 10 minutes long, depending. They're pretty cool. They're very well done, and if you haven't seen them, go take a look at them on the web. There's a link to them. And you can also see about public events, opportunities to comment on decisions related to cleanup, etc. So we're pretty excited about what we're doing out there. We have a lot of very diligent, well-intentioned people going to work every day. I'm proud to represent them, and I appreciate your allowing me to talk to you today. Thank you.